So, yeah, I'm Chris, everybody. All right, let's dive in. We're going to take a look at a couple of things. You know, that is the point of a demo. Perfect. Okay, so we head over to our Classic Warrior Horses site, as we do. Right, and we're going to take a look at a list the Warrior Horses have used a number of times. We're going to take a little more in-depth look at a couple of options to make things easier. Right, so one of the lists that the horses use, right, is a hit list. Right, so these are targets to be eliminated, murdered, destroyed, killed, whatever you want to say. Right, so we've got this, and we've taken a look at this. We've actually formatted this a couple of times. Already got a format here. This is an out-of-the-box format where we've updated the icons and a couple things like that. Right. What I want to talk to you about is making things easier to edit. So we have looked at inline edit field, and we've looked at setValue before, but we haven't really looked at them in a whole lot of depth. So guess what we're going to do? Yeah, that's right. We're going to do it. So one of the things I like is like on a status column, you can always switch over to quick edit, or you can open up this item, right? I'm trying to change the status, and then I can click on it and I can edit it, and that's fine, right? There's a lot of steps. And sometimes you want that exact type of thing, right? If you're working with a whole form and you want them to edit everything, and that's exactly where you want them to edit it, right? In line with all your extra stuff, but sometimes, especially a status field, right? It'd be really nice just to click and change that. So let me show you the quick and easy way to make any formatted column easily editable, right? So I literally don't care what's in the format right now. All right, so this is one generated by the design mode, blah, blah, blah. I'm just going to scroll all the way down to the bottom. Let's make it slightly bigger. Right, and right before that last little squiggly, I'm just going to add a comma, and I'm going to say inline. It'll start to, I just type an in. It'll be like, here you go. Hit tab, and instead of field name, I'm just going to write at current field. So let's make sure I'm actually in the box. Remove field name. I'm going to say at current field, and because that will apply to whatever the current column is, when I save that, eliminate that now, I've just made this inline editable, right? So that's pretty cool. So I could change, Ted the horse assassin is now deceased. Very sad, all right? But that's the idea here. So again, I didn't care what was in the format. I could apply whatever I wanted with my design mode, right? I've got data bars, whatever it is, and then I just add that one-liner, and it's suddenly editable. Now I can make that even easier on things like if I don't have a format, right? So this is just a date. There's no format. I can't just come in here and say format this column, right? Oh, wait, Chris said just add the one line. It's not there, right? Well, good news is I've got a pretty quick format for you that you can type in. I'm just going to paste it in for fun. So we can take a look at it. So all I'm doing here is I've basically made a format, and I'm using this displayValue. So let's bring this over so we can see it. Whip, whip, whip. There we go. Let's preview that. So by using the displayValue, I ensure that whatever I've set up, right? So this works for like number fields to get that, whatever your percentages and your commas and everything all set up. Works on dates to get this the way you wanted it, right? Because otherwise you sometimes get something a little ugly. Let's see, I think in this case we're going to get the same value because I haven't configured this differently. But generally you're going to be a lot safer if you add this displayValue, and it's not going to be a problem if there isn't a specific displayValue. So when we do that, now we edit it. SharePoint's smart enough to know, oh, this should be a calendar, right? So it's pretty cool. It's automatically going to pick all that stuff up. So this inline edit field is just drop dead simple way to do this kind of stuff. One thing to note is it doesn't have to be right here on what you're doing here. It also doesn't have to be this particular field, right? So one of the things I could do is I could put, instead of inline edit field as the current field, right? I could put a different field. So let's say status here. All right, if we preview that, now when we click on it, right, it can actually set a completely different field on here. So this is where you can get into some kind of cool stuff where, and you can have more than one inline edit field, right? You get one per element, right? But if you've got children inside this div, so say you've got a series of icons here, right? You can set up various editing types things and really kind of control that experience. That's pretty cool, but it's okay, right? All we're really doing is saying bring out whatever the inline editor is, right? Whether that's, a calendar, or it's the choice looked up, or it's a people field, all that kind of stuff. But now I'm going to get rid of that. But what if you want to be a little more specific, right? So this is where we start to look at things like setValue. So setValue is a different way to do this. And I should also note here that when we're doing this, when you're looking for help on this stuff, right? So if we go over to our sample repo, so this is the GitHub site, if you go to aka.ms/list formatting, you'll end up here on this site. And if you're looking for help with setting up these edit values, right, because this could be a little bit tricky. This is a little more of an advanced area. If you go into groupings, we've got a couple of different ways you can look at that, right? So one, you can go by category, and we've got a category for inline editing here. So there's 48 different samples that do some kind of editing from the view of your list, right? So that's cool. If you want to be a little more specific, right, because this is everything kind of all dumped together, you can come down here and go by feature. And so feature, we've got basically on keywords, so inline edit field. So if you want to see specifically the samples that are using the inline edit field, that's how you're going to find those. But you can also go by action. So for the stuff I'm about to show you, set value here, we've got lots of samples that are also showing how to do set value. So set value is a little more specific. And let's take a look at what that means. So when I say set value, we come over here, let's add a column here. So let's just add a person column. Hit next. And we're going to call this the squad. This is our hit squad. Ooh, not squad. Squad. All right, we're going to say, yeah, show the profile photos. That sounds great. We're going to allow multiple selections. Perfect. All right, so we're going to save that. Now we've got this go away thing. I promise there's a column. There it is. Okay. You know, and again, we can edit this thing. All right, so let's add just on this one, let's add to the squad. All right, so the squad here will be me. I want to be part of this murdering. Right, and we'll add another guy here. That's great for now. Okay, so click off to make sure it gets saved, and we close it. And that's kind of the out of the box, and that's great. And if we try to apply that inline edit field, we're going to have a couple of issues there, right? So if we apply the inline edit field, just like I showed you before, column settings, we format this column, scroll that over, and I'll grab that one from before with that display value. That display value is really only good for some of your basic column types, right? So things that have kind of multi-properties like lookup columns or person fields, or, you know, there are multi-lookup in general, this isn't going to work great. So when you preview that, object, wow, that looks terrible, right? So if we wanted to, we could instead change this into, say, instead of current field.displayValue, say equals, and we could join them together, right? So at the current field, we say we want their title because that's their name, right? We're going to just join those with a comma and a space with a single quote, and then there we go, and then let's put a parenthesis on there. All right, we can do something like this, and then it's a little better. Right now, it's actually an editable field, and that's cool, right? But you'll notice one other thing that happens, right? We get this. It's okay, right? But we lost some of that stuff we had, right? Where we had their display, you know, photo and so on. It's not even correctly showing it here in the edit view. That's okay, right? So now we need to get a little more creative when we have something like this. The other thing we lost is that person card, right? So we had that hover field before. Let me remind you what that was. Let's delete that. Save that, right? So we had this. So if we want to keep all of that intact, then we have to go a little more specific in how we want to do this. The other thing we want to consider is sometimes we don't want to just add editing capabilities across the board. All right, if you want to add editing capabilities across the board, keep your formats, well, then switch it to grid view. And then over here, you'll notice, some people notice an option, you can actually save the view as, when you got a little star like that. Now, if I save it again, my default view is now grid view, right? So when people come back here, they're always in the grid view. And if you're really looking just for a quick edit list, forget all this format stuff, just do that, okay? That's not what we're looking for here. So let me save it again, get rid of that. And let's take a look a little more depth of how we might do set value on here. So set value, if we want to look at an example here on this one, we'll come back to the person field. We have this sample, and this is a sample that's available again on our sample repo. All right, and the idea here is that you can edit this field using these arrows. All right, so when I edit the arrow, it actually changes that threat level. This is a percentage field behind the scenes. And what the idea is, with the set value, say action, set value, right, in a custom row action, and then you're going to give it action input. Now, an action input is going to be the field name. It's the internal field name, but now you don't need the square bracket and the $sign. Right, you just put that there. You could actually put multiple fields you want to update at the same time. Right, so maybe when you click a button, you're also wanting to, you know, set the person that it's assigned to. You also want to set a due date, you know, out 1 week. and you want to set a status to, assigned, something like that. You could do all of that with a single button here by just having each field listed inside this action input. All right, so in this case, we're just setting the threat level. All right, so this is the left arrow, and what we're saying is we're looking at the value, and we're putting an expression. So this can either be an expression, it can be another column reference, it could just be a value, right? So if I just wanted to put a 5 there, I could. One thing to note, it's a little weird, is that on percentage fields, the value that you get back is a decimal, right? So it's going to be a value between 0 and 1, but the value you set it with should be a value between 0 and 100. I know that doesn't make a lot of sense. That's just something to note, which is why I'm showing this example right here. So you'll notice that I'm comparing it as if it's a decimal, but I'm setting it as an integer, as a whole number. So there you go. That's just something to keep in mind. But the idea here is super powerful, right? You can start to set the value of all sorts of different things. So let's take a look at an example, right? So I love to provide guidance. I think one of the number one things you can do with formatting is to provide guidance and direction to your end user, right? Make it easier with what you want them to do. So in this case, I don't necessarily want them coming in and editing everything here, but maybe I want them to volunteer, right? Or remove themselves from a list of people. So wouldn't it be nice if I had an easy button to just say, yeah, add me here, remove me here, that kind of thing, right? So I've got this list. I don't need to edit the whole thing. It's a quick boom, boom, boom. These are the ones I want. So in order to do that, let's take a look at a format we can apply here. Because I've got a little more time, we're going to start over here. And instead of action, let's go down here and let's go like by column type. And let's say person, right? So here's let's actually go multi-person because that's what we've got. And the one I like to use a lot is the face pile. So the face pile is this guy right here. What it does is it shows all the profile pictures, but it also keeps that person card and everything. So I'm just going to copy this, head over back here, column settings, format this column, and let's paste that sucker. Let's preview it. There we go. So it starts to do this. Now, one of the things this does is it's designed to only show up to 3 people, right, at a time, and that's not quite what I want here. So we're going to edit this just a little bit here. So we're going to pull out a few things to make this kind of do what we want. And I'm doing it this way because this is how I make a lot of my samples. I start with somebody else's sample, or in this case, mine, right? But then I tweak it, right? I sometimes start from scratch, but a lot of times this is is the easiest way, right? Go grab a sample, figure out what they're doing in it, and then mess around with it, break it a little bit. So in this case, I can remove all the logic that says, hey, look at the number of things that are happening and kill them, right? So I'm going to do that really quickly. Just going to go in here and display here. We don't need that. So this is the actual photo. We don't need any special display logic on that anymore. And then this is actually the last one, which is the one that shows if we don't have anything. So we don't need that either. So we can remove that. Let's preview that. See if I messed it up. There we go. All right. So all I really did, and it's a little weird because we only got 2. Let's save that and add a couple more on another one here just so we can see what we're looking at. Let's add to the squad. Let's add myself. Let's add that Nate. And let's add Dan. Sounds good. There we go. And let's add Vigo Horsenberg, just so we've got a couple more, and we'll add Tiny Horse Jr. Perfect. Okay. That will also help me illustrate a problem in just a moment. Perfect. Okay, so now we've got some weirdness right now. We're showing them all, but it looks a little strange, right? It's starting to shrink them down, right? So what's really happening there is we are drawing for each one of these. We're using the for each on this to draw a little person field, but they're all kind of getting squashed down. So what we can do is on that parent element, we could say a style, and let's just add some wrapping, right? So we're going to say display is flex, and we're going to say flex wrap is wrap. Boom, there we go. So now we're wrapping those, right? So now we're not cutting them off. But we've got ourselves a display. That's cool. And we hover over them. All right, we should get let's save it and make sure we're actually, just refresh. Make sure we've got that person field still working the way we want. We don't, which is sad. I eliminated that somehow. All right, we'll come back with that. But the idea here is we're editing this. We're getting this just going a little bit here. And let's see, where's my default hover field? I think that's what I've eliminated. I have eliminated my default hover field should be the person iterator. Anybody see that? I think I eliminated the wrong one. That's all right. Let's just grab it from over here and we'll add it right back in. So the idea is if I want to show that, right, then inside my image here, I would add that here instead of the attributes right under here. I would say default hover field is going to be my person iterator. And if I preview that now, let's see if we got that back. There we go. Now we've got that back, right? So now if I hover over them, we should get, yep, there's the person editor. So the idea here is cool. So now we've got something going, but now we want to add in that add or remove kind of functionality, right, to volunteer or not. So what we're going to do is we're going to add an extra little button over here. So we're just going to come down here and we're going to kind of copy some of this stuff from before. And let's just write our own div here, just like what we did for the above div. Because we want it to be almost the same, but instead of an image, we're going to switch it up a little bit. So we're just going to paste that in. We're going to scroll up here. We don't need a for each anymore. Bye-bye. All right, so we'll get rid of that. And then we're going to say, why don't we come down here and we'll go to our children instead of an image type, right? We don't need that anymore. Let's just bye-bye. All right, and we're just going to put instead, let's put an elm type of, say, div. All right, in this case, we're going to say some attributes, and we'll say the icon name. All right, this is where we specify an icon, and we'll head over to, that thing. How can I? Whoop, whoop, whoop. Ignore my teams underneath. There we go. We'll switch it that way. All right, we'll go back to Flycon. Right, so Flycon has all these icons here, so it's flycon.io. If I go to the user, there's a bunch of options here, so in this case, we'll take the, this one looks good, add friend. I'm going to copy that. Go back over here. That's the icon I want to show. It's going to be add friend. All right, we can preview that to kind of see how it's going. Oh, looking lovely, right? But we're starting to get an icon that's showing up. We need to specify the sizing and some other things here, but we can do that. So maybe we do that on the parent, right? So we've got this div that's showing up here. So let's add some attributes here. Let's add like some class. So class. Yeah. All right, so class. And here we're going to just add some classes. So we're going to say MSBG color, right? We're going to say neutral lighter. If we do that, then we get this, ooh, pretty. All right, so now if we do that, we go MSBG color. This is going to be the one we're going to add. So I'm going to say green. All right, but I'm going to say -- hover. And when I do that, now it's only green on hover. Ooh, now we're getting somewhere, right? So now we've got that on hover. Now let's check that text, right? So we're going to say the MS font color is neutral secondary, and we'll say the MS font color -white -- hover, so that we can get it, but it hovers. Let's preview that. So now we see our icon actually turns white when we hover it, and let's change that sizing a bit as well because that's not so great. Oh, MS font size -L. Let's try large. Oh, that's better. Okay, and by the way, where I'm getting these classes, where I'm just pulling these out of nowhere, I'm not. We're actually listing those again back here. So we've got these grouped. So if you wanted to see like those MSBG colors I just typed, right? Here they all are. So you can see there's a bunch of those, but there's also, the theme-based ones. So you can see some of the neutrals down here. This is where I'm getting all these, and you can see all the different samples that are using those as well. So if you're interested in these classes, this is where you find them. All right, now back to them. All right, so that's cool. Now it's looking a little better. Let's, position it the way we want, right? So the best way to do that is, once again, with Flexbox. So we're going to say display, and we're going to say flex, and we're going to justify that content, because that sounds fun. We're going to space it evenly. This stuff isn't really formatting specific. This is more just understanding Flexbox, which is a bit of a beast in itself. But there are a bunch of websites, if you just type in Flexbox, that help you understand what all these different properties mean. But basically what I did there was I said, put it in the middle. So that's what I did. Those are the magic words for put it in the middle. So now we've got an icon that's in the middle. It shows up green. It doesn't actually do anything, but we'd like it to, right? So now we've got this kind of plus button, which helps guide that user. So what we do, we're going to add that setValue. So we're going to do that up here on the main div rather than that icon down below, just so we've got the full circle to click anywhere. I'm going to say custom row action. There we go. I'm hitting tab to have it auto suggest for me. And this one I'm going to put setValue with a lowercase s and an uppercase V. And so then we need those action inputs, right? So action input, you can see it automatically tells me the field name and the value to set. So in this case, right, I'm just going to put the value on I want to set it on the squad. All right, and the value to set in this case, right, so this is a multi-person field. So how do I deal with that, right? Because I don't want to just set, I want to add to it. So the way you do that is you're actually going to set an array in here. So an array is just a collection of objects, right? So, but I need it to have my object in it that I want or not want. In this case, I want to add myself, right? So I want to say, add me in there. So the way you can do that is we have these helpful little expressions. So I can type equal to say it's an expression. I can say append to. So append to takes an array, and then it takes whatever value. So the array in this case, I could say at current field, right? But I'm just going to, for clarity, I'm going to say squad. Okay. But I need the array, and the array in this case is not just squad. It's actually the array of the email's address. So squad.email. And then I'm going to say the person I want to add is me, which I've got this nice placeholder for my email address, which is at me. And just close that parenthesis. And the idea is I'm saying set the squad value to whatever it is already, but also with me inside of it. Okay. So if we preview that or save it, here we go. Now I should be able to hit this. Boom, I just got added. That's pretty cool. All right. This doesn't make a whole lot of sense though. I'm already in it. So what just happened, right? So now we need to change this around just a little bit. So let's come up here and do the opposite. So that's pretty cool. So let's add another button to remove. All right, so let's just grab all of that. And sometimes the easiest way to do that is collapse it, and then you know you got the whole object. Copy it, then put a comma and paste that sucker. Okay, so now we need a different icon. So let's go back to Flycon over here. And what's one there? That's leave user. Let's do, I think it's called follow. There it is. Follow user. Perfect. Because it's got a little arrow on it. We're saying, get out of there. All right. Oh, I made some beepings on my side. All right. Follow user. Preview that. So now we've got a different button. All right. Oh, we don't want it to be green, though. So we come up here and we say, instead of green, right, let's put red. So we preview that. Now we get red. That looks good. All right, and maybe we want to put make this a little more obvious what we're doing. Let's put a title, right? So we can get a tooltip. We're going to say leave. All right, and up here, let's put another one and this guy as well, because we didn't put one. That would be nice of us to do that. So right after class, we're going to say title is volunteer. I'm volunteering to murder them. Perfect. Okay, so preview that. Now we get a nice little leave and volunteer, so that helps. All right, but one of the weird things is, well, first we got to make the remove. We have to have this work. So there's actually the opposite of append to, which is remove from. All right, so we can do that, and if we save that, so now if I hit this button, right, I should be removed. Perfect. So I can add myself, and I can remove myself. And that's okay, but I got two buttons, so let's make those conditional because I don't want two buttons, right? We want to guide users, not confuse them by having buttons that don't work. So one of the ways we can do that is if we come up to where we have display as flex, well, let's make that conditional. All right, so we say equals, and we're going to say if index of, so index of can work on a string like text, or it can also work on an array. So we could say at current field dot email, so that array, if me, all right, so the index of my email address in that list of email addresses in the field is greater than -1, right? So -1 means it's not found, but if it is in there, all right, so what was this, our remove, or was it, yeah, this is our leave. So if it's in there, then we want to show it. So flex, and if it's not in there, we don't want to show it, right? So let's close that, let's preview that. All right, perfect. So now let's take that, and we're just going to reverse it on the other button. All right, so we've got both buttons here. We could have made everything else really conditional, but it gets really hard to do that. I just like to make basically elements that are configured and then make them conditionally show. I find that a lot easier to work with than trying to go and you know, be real clever on putting a formula in here to change it to green or red based on what it is. Like, blah. I don't want to do that. I just do it all on the element itself, right? So let's do that here. Boom. And the only thing we need to do now is just reverse what we did. So now we're going to say none on this one, on the true. And we're going to say flex on the false. There we go. Preview that. Oh, what have I done? Oh, I said false. You can't talk and type. Preview that. There we go. So now I've got my button, right? So this is leave because I'm in there, and this is add because I'm not in there. So that's pretty cool. So let's save that. Now we've got that, and that's awesome. Sorry, so I can come in here and I can say, no thanks, I don't want to help with that one. Or I could say, yes, I do want to help with that one. Sign me up, right? And you'll see that it's just updating the list item behind the scenes, and that's awesome. Now, one of the things I wanted to mention is there is an issue here. So we are working with email addresses exclusively on the people fields. So you can update them with the username, but in this case, we're just using the email address because that's the placeholder we have with the @me. But one thing to note is if you've got users like I do that don't have email addresses, like say Vigo Horsenberg here, right? They don't get my people fields to show up for some reason. They don't have email addresses. So what happens? We're going to try and work with these email addresses. Oh, it dies, it fails, so sad, right? Sorry, Madonna, I can't join your squad to murder you. And that's so sad, right? So was it really Madonna? It was Madonna. That's funny. Okay, so that's something to keep in mind. If you have users, which I think is pretty rare, but if you have users without email addresses, this is going to be a problem, and you're not going to be able to do this kind of fancy formatting, right? So in that case, you're going to have to switch to one of the less fancier format options, right? Or, you can always just let them edit it right here on this thing, right? So because you can still click and edit those. Okay, so that's just one thing to note, and that's, there you go. Let's take a look at the slides and kind of wrap this sucker up. Boom. So inline edit field. So you can use that current field in the column formats, right? So that inline edit field at current field is the quick win to any existing format to make it quickly editable. Especially helpful on those choice columns because choice columns come with formats out of the box by default, right? So get them configured with the colors and the icons and borders and whatever else you want, and then slap that on there, and you've got a fancy field, right? And then, of course, you can use this quick format for most other types outside of the complex field types like people and so on. And then finally, setValue. That is important to note. Again, unlike everywhere else where we reference internal field names, you don't need the square bracket and the $sign. And then you can do all sorts of really cool stuff. There is one that I didn't show you, which is the replace. So replace will actually remove it from the array and then add your item in between. I haven't really found a lot of use cases where I'm wanting to do that, but it may come up, especially if you're using a choice column in a weird way. We're say you're using a choice column, it actually means a couple of different things. You could use it for that and so on. But overall, you're mostly going to be using these append to and remove from for multi-choice or multi-person columns. For just single person columns, you're just going to use the email address or not, and so on. All right. So if you're looking to find more details about all this stuff, again, I showed you where you can look at those groupings, and that's where you can find all sorts of samples. There's some really cool samples out there doing some neat stuff. The editing stuff really takes your sample or your format to a whole new level. So check it out, and that's all I got. Boom.
Awesome, Chris. Well, I tell you, I love how diverse and inclusive your samples are. I mean, they're for everyone.